This week on the WriterCon podcast.
You never need to say, I'm just working on my first book. You never need to say, I'm just writing genre fiction.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Thank you, Jesse Ulrich. And hey there, writers. Thank you for joining us. As this podcast is being released, we have just completed the WriterCon retreat, so all eyes are now focused on the big event, the WriterCon annual conference in Oklahoma City, August 30th through September 2. That's Labor Day weekend. It is the best time to be in Oklahoma City. Not that there's a bad time, and particularly a good time to be at the Renaissance Waterford, which is a gorgeous hotel. Jesse, which is going to be more popular this year, the swimming pool or the hot tub?
Well, since last year, the hot tub was actually working. It was very exciting for me. Yes. But the pool was pretty popular, and it's
100 degrees out. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But and the hot tub's kind of hidden, and I'm not going to tell anyone where it is. So
keep this year. Yeah, this year it'll be more like 115 pounds.
Yeah, it's gonna
degrees out.
It's gonna be hot. And one of the reasons the hot tub won't be popular is because of that temperature. So it's another reason I enjoy going in it. So
yeah, you might have it to yourself this year.
Yes.
I should mention that in addition to wet entertainment, there will also, we have other entertainment. We have karaoke night, and
That's
we have the
true.
open mic, and WriterCon Jeopardy. I'm adding the match game this year just to get really, I don't know. That's a different vibe from Jeopardy, if you want to know. If you know what I mean. But I just got to say there is some actual education taking place. We've got more than 70 speakers and 3 keynotes and more than 90 sessions, 13 contest categories, bunch of agents and publishers, more than a dozen taking pitches. So if you're interested in taking your writing to the next level, this is the place to be, okay? Our interview today is with Matty Dalyrimple, who writes both short stories and novels for 2 different crime series, the Ann Kinnear suspense novels and short stories, and the Lizzy Ballard thrillers. We will talk to her about her fascinating body of work, but first, the news. It has often been said that the book business is impossible to understand. Of course, I think people in Hollywood say more or less the same thing, but it's always been true in the book world. You may remember, Jesse, just last week we were talking about how print sales appeared to be better than expected, perhaps in part because young people, Gen Z, the people who brought back vinyl, are now trying to bring back print books. Except now we've got a news story indicating that the book talk demographic, primarily Gen Z, is also spiking sales of Kindle devices. In other words, those little handheld things like Jesse's got up on the screen right now that you use to read ebooks. So I don't know what to think at this point. But according to an Amazon vice president who spoke to the Wall Street Journal, links in the show notes, sales of the most recent Kindle device have grown in the double-digit percentages for both of the past 2 years, with people under 45 representing the fastest increasing part of the customer market. Something like 60% of the sales growth derives from those people who have never purchased a Kindle device before, which suggests that they are indeed young, even younger than 45. And this article also mentioned that digital book checkouts from libraries, you can do that. You can borrow
Yes, you can.
from the library. Those have grown 75% since 2029. And did you know this, Jesse? Amazon users can now connect their Kindle account, their Amazon ebook account, with Libby, Libby. That is the most popular library checkout app. It's the one owned by Overdrive, who is the
I use
leader.
Libby. Libby's great.
You really? Do you
Yeah.
use it to find books or reserve books? Or?
Yeah, so normally if I'm thinking about starting like a new series or whatever, I will see if the book is available on Libby before buying it, because I'd rather check it out from a library. And a lot of times for our listeners, if you are also a fan of a series, books that are series, a lot of times like the first book will have like a long hold on it, but books 2, 3, and 4 won't. So like you buy the first one and then you can check out the other ones as you go. So,
oh, sweet. I will admit that when I was preparing for this, I thought Libby, and I downloaded it and tried to get in, and then I found that my library card had expired. So I'm going to have to
have an active library.
So I'm gonna have to make a trip before I get to use it.
So I have a question for you, Bill, because I didn't get a chance to read this article. So have Kindle sales never sort of matched up to ebook sales, meaning that like there was a small group of Kindle owners who were reading a massive load of ebooks, and now like more people are actually like, I guess I always thought the two things would be kind of not even, because a Kindle lasts for a couple years, but I assume people who are ebook readers would keep buying Kindles every couple of years as they,
And I'm sure many do, but there are other places to read ebooks. Speaking for
That's true.
Law,
That's true.
As you know, I'm an Apple guy, so I'll buy it from Amazon because that's where it's cheapest, but I'll read it on the Kindle app on my iPad, not on an actual Kindle device. And I suspect I'm not the only one.
No, and there are also some other companies that make really good ebook readers. Kobo has a really nice one I've always wanted to buy. I'm stuck in the Amazon walled garden for now. So, but yeah.
When the first iPad broke out, I always bought books from Apple because they looked prettier,
Yeah.
They worked on the iPad, and they did that cool thing where you scroll the pages and you can see the page ends. I mean, it's all a digital illusion, but still, it was so cool. But at some point, they were like twice the cost of books on Amazon.
Yeah.
So, come on.
Yeah. Last time I read a book on an iPad, it was before they had iPads that were like a reasonable size and weight. So it was not a pleasant experience, but I imagine if you bought like a small iPad now, it'd be very nice to read on.
You can, although I just got one that's actually larger. I'm going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And no, it's not because my eyesight is fading. It's because my daughter, Katie, scanned all my piano sheet music into files. And so now I can carry it with me everywhere I go on the iPad, but I want it to be large. I want it to be at least sheet music size.
Yeah.
So I got the larger one.
Sure.
All right. News story number 2 is about AI guides, because it wouldn't be the WriterCon podcast if we didn't talk about AI.
And Amazon. We're hitting both.
It probably wouldn't be any news story at this point if you didn't mention AI. But this one's different because for about a year now, there are 2 philosophy professors who you thought it was going to be computer people, but no. These professors have been trying to enlist prominent authors and intellectuals with an unusual idea. They've been asking these famed thinkers if, in exchange for a fee, they wouldn't mind turning themselves into AI chatbots, basically. We're talking about the professors are John Kaag and Clancy Martin. In 2020, Kaag started with a different partner to create a publishing company called Rebind Publishing. You can visit their website. The idea was that the imprint would pair a world-class expert with a classic work meaning in the public domain, anything published before 1928, so they don't have to pay for, pay authors or anything like that. They just get the public domain book and get some expert to talk about it. For instance, their superstar is Deepak Chopra. Am I saying that right? Deepak Chopra. And he's going to be their expert on Buddhism and Buddhist texts. texts. And you can see that on their website. They also say, they have many other less famous people. They say Margaret Atwood is going to do A Tale of Two Cities, but that's not on their website yet. They do have, I was impressed by this, they've got John Banville, a very well-known Irish novelist, who's doing Dubliners, the James Joyce short story collection. And they actually flew to Dublin so that they could record him both video and audio talking about this book. And they're pretty excited about this. They think here's a quote, "It's one of the great artistic opportunities of our time," end quote. And they're even going to do some themselves. So what do you think, Jesse? Does this sound exciting or kind of appalling?
I think this is a great idea. Like, this is using AI for a good thing, where like you get an expert to like, because listen, these classic texts, you can estimate and guess. I would say at least 50% of any question someone would ask about that classical work, right? And so you can build that into this already. And I mean, I'd be curious to see how well it works, but I love the idea of, again, for every high schooler who had to read Heart of Darkness, it'd be great to ask an AI expert a question about what the hell you just read. So,
yes, I have to admit, I was impressed when I went to their website. If you see that little green box in the right corner that says, click to get on our wait list, I did that, and I am now 5,742 on their wait list. So it might be a while before I can say more, but I too thought, look in the corner, Pride and Prejudice. I read that once a year anyway, probably. So how nice to have somebody explain to me what it means finally. Apparently, they're spending enormous amount of time with these people, basically trying to anticipate every question anybody might ask. I mean, they never will, but if they get close enough, the AI can adapt. And you'll hear Margaret Atwood or whoever answering your questions, not all the way through the book, but they have videos that you can just watch before you read it or anytime. And then there are designated points in the text, apparently, where you can pause and ask questions of the chatbot and try to get them in. And I mean, it's like taking English Lit without actually paying tuition or...
Yes. Yeah, Rebind, if you're listening, and I hope somehow, through Google SEO, sometimes people find our podcast when we talk about them, get Armin Shimmerman to do a little AI chatbot for Shakespeare. He's a great Shakespeare scholar, and I bet he would love it. So,
wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah. I just signed up for the beta list. I'm number 5488. So.
Oh, well, I must have transposed digits, or maybe they just like you better.
Maybe.
I don't know. Okay, so here's the tough question that I did not give you any chance to prepare for, but that's the way I like to roll with you. So if you could choose any possible combination other than the one you just said with Armin Shimmerman, what famous person would you like to chat AI style with about what book? What person, what book?
Ooh, okay, hold on. I think I have the book.
Okay.
I don't remember what it's called. Okay, yeah. Who's the person for this?
I mean, while you think, I'll just say I couldn't even think of a very good. I mean, you're not going to talk with Voltaire about Candide. I assume anybody who's passed, they're not going to. I mean, talk to Emily Dickinson about her own poetry. Wouldn't that be a hoot? But we can't record her voice, but.
So this is very specific and very off. It's on brand for me. It's gonna be weird for some of our listeners, but there's so the book is William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. Okay, which I read in high school and I'm still very confused by. And I would like the AI chatbot to be. There's a comedian whose name is Trey Crowder. He goes by like the name. He's the liberal redneck. He speaks with a very deep Alabama accent, but his politics are much more left leaning, and he's always sort of explaining, living in a red state to people. And I would love his take to help me understand William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying.
Oh, that's so good. Or The Sound and the Fury, which always confuses people because there's more than one character named Quentin, and he never tells you when he switches from one to the other. AI chat Or maybe that just removes all the mystery. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the chatbot could also lie to you too. So,
Well,
right?
I mean, it is just offering an opinion. No, it shouldn't be Emily Dickinson talking about her own. It should be like Billy Collins
There you
discussing
go.
Emily
Yeah.
Dickinson's poetry. I would pay for that, actually.
Or Taylor Swift talking about Emily Dickinson's poetry, right?
Patti Smith, because she name drops
there you go.
Patti Smith
There you
on her
go,
new
yeah.
album.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody's told Patti Smith. Patti Smith is on my wall of albums, which we
There
can't
you
see
go.
right now
Yes, yeah,
because
can't see
Laura's
now.
not here. But,
Our longtime viewers will know.
okay.
They'll know.
All right. Just to be different, Jesse, why don't we talk to a living author who's speaking with her own voice about a book she wrote. Let's talk to Matty Dalyrimple. Matty Dalyrimple, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It is lovely to be here.
All right. One traditional first question. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, this is going to be interesting because I got to hear the very end of your conversation with Eloisa James.
Yeah.
And you guys kind of covered what is often my piece of advice that I offer, which is never to say just. And I think that applies to every part of a writer's career. You never need to say, I'm just working on my first book. You never need to say, I'm just writing genre fiction. Once you start publishing, you never need to say, I just have X number of people in my Facebook group, because, I've heard people say, I just have 50,000 people on Facebook. And like, dude,
you're doing very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've heard people say very proudly that they have 50 people following them on Facebook. And that second one is the way to go. It's so easy to denigrate one's own artistic and business
It's always somebody you can compare
word.
yourself with unflatteringly, right? So
Yeah.
Yes. And as an
imposter syndrome is real.
Yeah.
Tough.
I think a part of it is modesty, but especially if you are an indie published author, as I am, then you have a responsibility to approach this as a business. And McDonald's isn't saying, I just sold however many billions of hamburgers. And neither should people say, I just indie published. Like, that's the one that sets my teeth on edge the most. Hearing people say, I'm going to pursue a traditional deal, and if I don't get it, I'm just going to self-publish. That's so wrong for so many people.
That's easy.
I gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, make your choice already. All right. You've got at least 2 different series that I know of. So tell us about the Ann Kinnear. Am I saying that right? Ann Kinnear series?
Yeah.
Tell us.
So I was also interested to find out a little bit about what Lara is writing, because the Ann Kinnear series is also supernatural suspense, as I think you write.
Ooh, excellent.
And it is about a woman who has the ability to communicate with the dead. And she has a consulting business based on that ability that is run by her brother. And it is all handled in a very business-like way. She has clients. She has a website. She signs contracts. She does engagements, just like she was an architect.
I'm going to have to grab it. Yes, it sounds very, we have some things that kind of overlap.
Yeah.
A little bit of some similarities there.
Well, for those who are watching,
there you go.
The cover of the most recent Ann Kinnear book, Be With the Dead. And you were also talking about Shakespeare. So all the books in the Ann Kinnear series are based on Shakespeare quotes. So the first is The Sense of Death, The Sense of Reckoning, The Falcon and the Owl, A Furnace for Your Foe, A Serpent's Tooth, and Be With the Dead. So all of those have a Shakespeare quote behind them that is appropriate for the theme of the story. So there are now 6 books in the Ann Kinnear series, and I'm now taking a little break from Ann Kinnear and focusing on my other series, which is the Lizzy Ballard thrillers.
That would be Lizzy, right? Yeah.
Yes.
How do they differ?
So the common theme in my fiction is what happens when an extraordinary ability transforms an ordinary life. And so obviously for Anne, her extraordinary ability is her ability to communicate with the dead. I had this idea for a different extraordinary ability that didn't really work in the Ann Kinnear world, in part because I really like books where just one thing is tweaked I don't necessarily like it when it gets weirder and weirder. I like everything is normal except one thing is tweaked. And so I didn't want to just insert the second extraordinary ability, but the first book is sort of about Lizzy, who's very young at the beginning of the first book, and her parents learning what this special ability is. But I always say, if you like Stephen King's Firestarter,
okay,
kind of think of it in those terms. And it is much more thriller-esque than the Ann series, which is mystery and suspense. And so it's basically about how Lizzy and her allies are going to or not avoid the clutches of the primary bad guy, Louise Mortensen, who is the person who is responsible for Lizzy's ability. And the most recent book in that series is called Scare Card. And just as the Lizzy books have a theme, or all the Ann Kinnear titles have the theme of Shakespeare quotes, the Lizzy books all have the theme of the first three are based on children's games, rock, paper, scissors, snakes and ladders, and the iron ring. And then the second three are based on poker terms, Scare Card being a poker term.
You are so ready with your visual aids. I'm impressed. I just feel sorry for the people listening to this on audio. You're missing out. Go find the YouTube. She came
please
ready.
do.
You seem to favor Philadelphia as a setting there. Is there a reason for that? What's the tie there?
Well, I live right outside Philadelphia. I live in Chester County, which is just to the west of Philadelphia. So it's the area I know the most. When I was working on the first Ann Kinnear book, it was actually originally set in San Francisco. At the time, my sister lived in the San Francisco area. I was going out there a lot to visit her, and I pictured this one climactic scene taking place at one of those beautiful old Victorian homes in San Francisco.
I love those.
Yeah. And then she moved. I stopped visiting San Francisco so much, but I really thought, I really want to write about a place that I know very well. And I've lived in one place or another in southeastern Pennsylvania since I was in the 4th grade. So I know it pretty well. And then I especially love Chester County. So many of the stories are centered in Chester County.
Nice. Am I right that you've also written a book on podcasting for authors?
Yes, I have 2 nonfiction books. Yeah, well, I love talking podcasting with fellow podcasters, and I have a podcast called the Indie Author Podcast, just coming up on 250 episodes. Nice. And it's all about the writing craft and the publishing voyage, because I love the nautical metaphor for writing and publishing. There's no aspect of writing and publishing that I can't come up with a good nautical metaphor for. And so the Indie Author Podcast was actually, I jumped into my other nonfiction book, which is called Taking the Short Tack. I can describe that a little more later, but podcasting for authors is based on my experience with the Indie Author Podcast and how podcasting is for people who want to get word out about their books and what are the best practices for deciding the approach to take and testing the waters, because as you guys know, it's a time investment and a money investment, and usually a labor of love, usually not a money-making venture for most podcasters. And so I ask some questions early in the book, helping people understand if this is right for them or not, and then go from that very strategic view through to the most tactical, how do you make sure your sound quality is good kind of consideration. So that's podcasting for authors.
It's very helpful.
Sounds invaluable.
Yeah.
And you've also written, I believe, about writing short fiction, short stories and whatnot, which really interests me. What are the differences between long form, say, novel and a short story?
Well, I always have to offer the caveat that my other nonfiction book, which is called Taking the Short Tack, that is the one that's based on a nautical metaphor, because a short tack is the maneuver a sailor would use if they're navigating in a narrow waterway. And so that whole idea of constricted space, works in many ways that we can delve into if appropriate. But it's focused basically on what do you do with the story once you have it. So the subtitle is Creating Income and Connecting with Readers Using Short Fiction. So less on the craft side and more on the publishing side. But I co-wrote that with Mark Leslie Lefebvre of Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast fame, and many other things. And Mark had a lot of experience, a lot of success in the traditional short fiction market. So he was able to bring a perspective on that. I indie published my Ann Kinnear suspense shorts via the retail platforms. so I was able to bring the indie perspective. But there are just lots of good business and creative things that writers can do with short fiction that, some of which are quite obvious, but some of which are a little more out of the box.
Now, when you say you indie published them, are you saying you uploaded and offered them as individual short stories or as an anthology? No, individual, like, I don't know, 99 cents a story, something like that?
Yeah, it's now we're kind of in the middle of 2024. Until the end of 2023, I was selling them for 99 cents. At the beginning of this year, I put the price up to $1.99. So those are all, each story, which is about, I'd say 4,000 to 6,000 words, is available individually. And then when I have 12 of them, I'm going to put them out as a collection called A Year of Kinnear. Year of Ann Kinnear, and
Nice.
there's going to be a story set in each month. So I think I'm up to like 8 now. So I still have a few more stories to write to fill out the full collection. But yeah, it's been very profitable for me. The last time I checked, I had earned over $600 from the sale of the shorts, which I believe is a lot more than I probably would have gotten if I had been fortunate enough to traditionally place them.
Well, except it's a short story. I mean, you might have sold it to a periodical, but I think you're doing better with the path you're on.
I believe I am too. And then the other point I like to make about indie publishing and short fiction is that I got what I believe was invaluable perspective on placement of almost anything, but it applies especially well to short fiction. That for 3 years, I've judged the Writer's Digest short fiction contest. And my job as one of several judges was to look at a pool of short stories, 1,500 words max. And I got about 500 of them. And then I had to pick my top 20 and rank them in order. And so the first year I did it, I opened up the first story, I read it, and I was like, well, I don't know. It could be okay, I guess, with a little editing. And so I put it in the maybe pile. Then I opened the second story and I said, well, that's a little better. Yeah, I can see that. Put that in the maybe pile. I have to say that by the time I got to 50, I had already found 20 fantastic short stories that I would be happy to put my name on as, recommending these for consideration for the final group of judges. And it was a very visceral example to me of excellent writing is the price of admission. It's not what guarantees you a place at the table. And so people, by the time I got to like entry 200, all I was doing was looking for a reason to put it in the no pile. All I was looking for was that, is this better than the 20 wonderful, wonderful stories I've already found? And so I think a lot of people say, oh, well, my story's so good, I'm sure I'm going to get a place for it. And I was like, no, the chances are just against you. Because I had 700 over the 3 years, the number of stories I had to read ranged from about 500 to about 700. And I'm not the only judge. And there's only one person who's going to get their story picked as the odds are just so bad. But the happy part about that is people don't have to worry that their lack of acceptance for that kind of thing, their lack of winning the place, is a reflection of their writing skill. It's not. It's all sorts of other things, but it's not necessarily writing skill.
And I'm going to jump in right now because you brought up indie publishing, and I think there are a lot of people listening who would like to know more. Like, what have you found that works? Or what have you found that does not work that you would like to share with people?
Well, over many years, so I published my first book in 2013. When I was finishing my first book, I spoke with friends I had who were traditionally published and said, what attracts you about traditional publishing? And they told me, and I was like, that doesn't really sound that good to me. And so indie publishing was a choice I made, not a path I was forced into. But so over the past 11 years, I've obviously thought about this a lot, especially having a podcast called the Indie Author Podcast. And the way I sort of encapsulate it is traditional publishing offers two things. One is it offers the A and B of publishing, the A being access. So could I get my books into a Barnes and Noble in my neighborhood? Probably, if I spend enough time on it. Is it likely my books are going to show up in in a Barnes & Noble in Oklahoma, no, it is not. You're just not going to be able to walk into a Barnes & Noble and see my indie published books. So there are platforms that traditional publishers can access that indie authors have a much more difficult time accessing, although that difference is becoming less and less over time, I believe, because all the online platforms are basically available to indies. And the second is bragging rights. And I kind of say that as a joke, but there are good professional reasons, like resume building, that somebody might want bragging rights, because it would be cooler to say that my books are published by Hachette than to say they're published by William Kingsfield Publishers. Cooler for the person I'm talking to, it's equally cool for me, but you don't get oohs and ahs when I say who my publisher is. So that's the A and the B, access and bragging rights. But the C's of indie publishing are, first of all, creativity, in the sense that you don't have to be creative on someone else's schedule. I speak to friends who were on contract with large publishers and they owe them 2, 3, 4 books a year, and they've got to be writing those books whether they're feeling it or not. And fortunately, if I'm working on a novel and I'm stuck or I'm just getting fed up with it, I can just switch to nonfiction, or I can switch to a short story. I can push my target publication date back a month. Control, I'm never going to have a cover I hate. And I think control is probably one of the biggest
not
reasons.
unless you choose to go with it.
Not unless you choose to go with it. Yeah. I used to say I'm always going to have a cover I love, and I don't think that's true, because I've made choices about my covers that I was like, personally, they weren't my favorite, but I felt like they were the right choice business-wise. But I'm probably never going to have a cover I hate.
Right.
Care, in the sense that I don't think any traditional publisher gives the same care to a backlist as an indie author does. I'm still promoting my first in series books more heavily than any other book. I don't think a traditional publisher would do that. You get that spike during the launch, and then they're on to other things. Chronology is one I added recently. Chronology being, I was just at a largely traditionally publishing focused conference, and I heard so many stories about people saying, oh yeah, I just signed my contract. It's going to be out in 2026. I'm like, 2026? That just hurts my heart to think of somebody waiting 2 years to have their book get to the hands of readers. So chronology, how long do you have to wait for the next step? It could be months or years if you go with a traditional publisher. And then cash, because recent surveys that have been run by both the Alliance of Independent Authors, who I work for, but also traditionally published outlets like the Authors Guild, have shown that in general, as an average, indie authors are making more money than traditionally published authors. Now, there's probably, they're the multimillionaire traditionally published authors who are skewing the results. But, as a whole, indie authors are doing better financially. So, that's my couple of minute overview of why I continue to choose indie for my own books.
Excellent. I like that. So you just actively, from the beginning, knew that indie appealed to you more and made a very firm choice that was the way you were going to go. I like that.
Yeah, I did. Because I have this podcast that, despite the fact that it's called The Indie Author, it actually addresses topics that are of issue to authors, regardless of their choice in publishing route. And at one point, I did write a standalone, and I thought it would be cool to be able to talk about these things from an inside perspective of both indie and traditional publishing. So I made some attempts to pitch it at conferences and things like that. It was just so soul killing. I just hated it. I hated the whole process. And I finally just said, this is not even worth it as an experiment. And again, what are the chances that I'm going to get one of these very, very few slots, very small?
I love it. This is a great example of choosing the right thing for you. And I love that you found exactly the right path for you. Yeah. What does your typical writing day look like? What's your process like?
Well, the other thing I was interested in hearing in Eloise's conversation is I also have a 25-minute daily writing sprint on Zoom with my fellow authors. Yeah, maybe this is
a new thing that I just haven't
heard yet. That's why we do a podcast, so we learn new things.
Yeah. Well, I heard about other people doing this a couple of years ago, and I was like, really? That sounds goofy. Because I think, just as she described, I get on a Zoom. It's actually not Zoom, but like Zoom, with a couple of writer friends. We set a timer, we write for 25 minutes. We take a break and then we set the timer again. We do that for 3 times. So about an hour and a half.
Even if you're cooking with gas and you're in the middle of a sentence, you would stop at the, I mean, I feel like I write in like 2-hour bursts, I look up suddenly and think, where'd the time go? But if somebody came in and told me I had to stop when I was in the middle of a thought, I'd get angry, I think.
Well, you don't have to. If people are rolling along, I don't know if I've ever had one of the people, they're usually only maybe 2-3 other people on these. And if someone is saying, I'm really rolling along, I'm going to skip the break, that would be perfectly fine. But we kind of take the temperature at the breaks. Like I say, how's everybody doing? And if someone says like, oh, I'm really going strong, then usually the breaks are like 10 seconds long because we go, okay, well, let's keep going.
Okay.
So we try to factor that in. And then every once in a while, someone goes like, oh, I'm so stuck. Can somebody suggest whatever? And then we have a little conversation. But yeah, I totally see what you're saying. What you're saying about
it gives you the opportunity to brainstorm. If you find that you or bounce some ideas off of 2 minds of something, you can kind of take the temperature on both and see what appeals to people. Okay, it's interesting. I'm gonna sit with that a little while. It's seeming like a very new and unsettling idea, but like Bill said, it's been such a lone.
I'll give anything a try once.
But yeah, if it could help, it could help. We sometimes, when we go for walks, when we have things, we'll bounce ideas off of each other, and usually by the end of the walk, we're like, okay, figured it out. I know what to do now. So I can see the appeal.
And I think that the key is finding a group of people who have the same goals as you. So I'm really explicit that the goal is generally not like socializing.
Right.
And so I've attracted a circle of people who are looking for that. Our breaks are very short and usually businesslike, and we really rarely do that. Can I talk about this brainstorming question? Then there are other groups I belong to more informally that are very explicitly socializing and brainstorming. So, you want to make sure you're looking for a group that is offering what you think is going to be most appealing to you.
Sure. Well, this has been fascinating. We need to get you back. Maybe we can do a swap with your podcast or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta ring the curtain on this one. One last question. What are you working on next?
Well, I'm working on the 5th Lizzy Ballard thriller, so that should be out later this year. And I'm also working on a book that will be out later this summer, a nonfiction book on becoming an author speaker. So I'm looking forward to that and having an opportunity to talk about that with people.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. This is lovely.
Just a few parting words. Remember, WriterCon Conference is August 30 to September 2. Keynote speakers include New York Times #1 best-selling author April N. Pike, another graduate of my past writing retreats, and books optioned by Disney, and she's just incredible and one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. She's keynoting one night. We've got Kimberly Lemming, who is the other best-selling author in the romantasy field, and Dan Martin, who comes to us from the world of movies and video games, including that most recent Star Trek game that I've played and we've talked about. Although I never finished that, now that I think about it, maybe I should. Anyway, bunch of speakers, agents, publishers, contests, pitching, everything you might want in a writer's conference, and so much more. Visit writercon.com. That's WRITERCON.com to learn more. And you could also subscribe to the completely free WriterCon e-newsletter or the not completely free WriterCon magazine, but you'll find them both on Substack. Just search for WriterCon. Okay? Until next time, keep writing. Remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. All right? See you next time.